would you please sit down? Thank you very much. I've been asked to chair this closing panel, the last event of our conference, and I'll just, if I may, take a moment to say how grateful I am to Carl for the invitation, and also to congratulate Carl and Edmund and the board and the president on this wonderful building. It's the first time I've seen it. It's 10 years since I was here and had my Campion life, and I'm so proud to be back to see it as it is now. So, well, now here's the panel of the remnant. Unfortunately, Greg's had to go, and Marie Yo has also had to go. But there are four of them here to face your questions. And I wonder if somebody would like to start the ball rolling. Please. Thank you. Ed.
My question's to you, Veronica. The great beneficiaries of the post-Bill revolution have been, in my opinion, predatory and irresponsible men. Women have been big losers, but men have also been significant losers. Masculinity's out. People talk about toxic masculinity, and it's the only word that's ever used as associated with masculinity. We don't talk about noble masculinity or authentic masculinity, which is also to a large extent been lost, much to the detriment of men not experiencing those things. Is your organised, and you also commented, good men make good women, and vice versa, good women make good men. It's a very complementary arrangement. Is your organisation or thrust the one to redeem men as well, or do we need sort of complementary organisation to do that, or philosophy?
There we go. You can use that if you like.
Oh, thank you. I think that's a good question. I imagine there would be a place for we are a women's magazine, but at the same time we really want to make it something that men are going to be interested in reading as well, because it affects them. And so it's women, but it's culture and it's history. That's really what it's about. And we get male writers as well, so that's important. I really want to make sure we can do that. I can't really say, because like Frances Wheeler says, with women during the Industrial Revolution, when she and all the other feminists sort of came to the fore, trying to protect these women from male predation in factory towns. She thought women needed a representative in the public space for women, and it had to be a woman because they understood better what women were going through. So that's kind of where Matilda's at. We believe women need to do this because we're understanding how burnt out women are from the sexual revolution. I don't feel like I can say the same for men, even though you're right, I think men are really suffering. They're not told to have self-mastery because that's just sexual repression, and that's making them addicts and slaves to their own appetites, and that's not grounds for flourishing either for them. And also, I think there's been a real death of male friendships, because I think men really think, oh, if I have a really good male friend, everyone will just assume we're gay. So there's a real polarisation of how you live out your masculinity now. You either become effeminate or you become really macho, and that's kind of like where the hookup culture kind of goes, or you kind of go into the whole queer questioning everything and your sexuality. So I guess it's trying to find that central place again where men can be men and masculine, and that not be a derogatory word for them. But I think the road to that is that sort of stoic sense of self-mastery and having power over your senses and discipline. And I don't know if there's a space for that dedicated to men in magazine form or whatever form out there, but I think there'd definitely be a place for it. That's it.
Good. Thanks, Friday. Great answer, great paper, and great question. Right, I think you're next. Sorry, I'll give it to Mr. Button.
Thank you. And thanks to the panel for their speeches today. My first question is probably, and maybe it is to the panel, but maybe Carl, more to you. What did Chesterton have to say about beauty in architecture and art? And then I guess my second question, and maybe Michael, is to you, is with Hertford College, the education is the liberal arts, and truth and beauty go together. How have you thought about the actual physical building and the chapel? I mean, it struck me that looked like a school. It didn't look like a liberal arts school. So I'd love to know a little bit about that. But yeah, perhaps Carl, you can answer my first question.
That's two questions there. Carl first.
Yes, well, I think the aspects of beauty that Chesterton was so sensitive to were grounded in his being an artist. I think he saw reality. He didn't just, as it were, think about it, and he saw it before he thought about it, as it were. The sort of points that Greg Sheridan was making about journalism, even that you only sort of lapse into the abstract when you've already exhausted the concrete. When you've come to grips with what is before you, what you see, what you feel, what you taste, what you touch, and then interpreting it. But if you start with the interpretations, these days masquerading as ideologies, and then try to apply it to the concrete situation, it's almost certain to be politically and socially disastrous. But I think another way in which Chesterton exemplified beauty, certainly in his appreciation of lovely architecture and so on. I mean, he wrote a book, for example, after he visited Rome, called The Resurrection of Rome, which he showed in his descriptions great understanding of the glories of Roman art and architecture and how those expressed the nobility of the human spirit. But I guess what captured my own interest so early that I mentioned today, and that is just how beautiful his language was. I mean, you're not just getting meaning, which is obviously the main and most important thing you would presume about language, that it conveys meaning. It interprets reality and conveys meaning. But Chesterton could, in addition to that, create, or I suppose respond to the other transcendentals, and beauty was among them. You can read a passage, even that one that I read of the last paragraph of Heretics, which had clear point and meaning about it, but you get to the end of it, the little play on words about, we shall be of those who have seen and yet have believed. Well, that's heavy in facetiousness, but there's something, that was the last paragraph of the book. You sort of close the book and think, wow, if I could just levitate at this point, physically capable of that, I would.
Just to briefly touch on, I guess, the architectural side of the development plans at Hertford. They're still very much in the early stages. One of the boundaries, I suppose, we had was to integrate the new building with the old. We went through a process of going to visit different schools that had developed new buildings, and unfortunately in some cases you would see these radical changes in the style of the building, which ultimately looked like a hodgepodge of architectural works. So that's one thing we wanted to avoid, and hence we've got that sort of consistency with the old style with the new building. with some of the images of the chapel, it is still very naked. We're still to go through a process of working with either the existing or potentially a new architect to give it more of the, I guess, a Catholic sense, you might say. And also, once the buildings are complete, then we also fill the space with, as you would have seen, some of the images, the books, that does start to create that liberal arts environment that we want in the school.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you both. There we go. Right, your turn this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. For those that know me, I could talk and ask 1,000 questions to each one of you. But the main thing that the four of you have talked about culture, and I do think is it's very important. So we talked about building culture, like in my school where I work. It seems that they're trying to build it, but it's true. Like Peter, you say you put it together in the business. You're trying with this sort of working for women, the culture for women in a school and the liberal arts. But once you have that culture, I would like to hear what you have to say about maintaining the culture, about maintaining that faithfulness to the message without really violating it and losing it. Because it's true, like we can see how beautiful things are built and transmitting that beauty that Mr. Button was asking about. But if we don't maintain it, the mess could be even worse than what we tried to build from. So maybe Peter, you've been the longest in the business. So if you want to tell us, you build the culture and maintain it. So how we go on that? Thank you.
Right, Peter, there we go. There's the mic. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, what you've posed, and we were talking about it before, is very difficult. Because I know you were saying that you have a small community surrounded by people who have different values, and that poses some problems. In a situation where you're creating a community and you're inviting people in, I don't think it's intolerant to reject people. I work on the club system. In one of my books I talk about tolerance, and I mention that my wife is a member of a club that demands that A, you are a woman, and B, you have a university degree before you can become a member. And I point out that that is not being intolerant. What happens if you're forming clubs, of course, is that if the rules are very restrictive, it'll be a small club. If you want to have a large club, you want to be the Collingwood Football Club, you have to allow a wider range of members in. And I think that's the constraint that you have, that if you have a tight-knit community with a very special, demanding set of values, you may have a very small community. But if you wanted to have a community of 200,000 people, then you've got to relax the rules a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Now, there's a gentleman here whose name I should remember from last year, but I don't. There we go.
Yes.
Crawley.
This is a current problem that we face as Catholics, followers of two major religions in the world are waging war against one another. It's the Jews and the Muslims. And we're in the country where supporters of both races are waging war against one another. What attitude do you take?
Thank you. Who'd like to tackle that one? This is an easy one. This should be. Anybody got 10 seconds for that one?
I think that I think that's a bumper that we might have my head slapping the boundary without batsman, or wicketkeeper touching the ball. Yes.
Peter, how about you? I've just been reading something. I've just bought Peter's book, and he found essays, and I asked him to inscribe it. He wrote, "Take one every night before bed." But you've got something on ISIS in there. Would you like to have a crack at that question?
Who are the two?
The Jews and the Muslims.
Israeli Gaza war.
Yes, to do with the Gaza situation. Yeah. You want to have a crack at that?
Yes, it's a wicked problem. That's a technical term, I think. Is that on?
It is on. Yeah, it just was. I think so. Yeah.
Look, I think if we look at the situation with Israel and Hamas at the moment, it's very difficult to see how you can resolve this problem. And people have been trying for a long while, and the solutions just never seem to work. You could say, well, I think one side should win totally, and then the problem goes away. I'm not sure that's a good answer.
That's a good effort. Thank you, Peter. Gary, here we go. And then who'd be next? Oh, well, you've had one. Can I? All right.
Make a suggestion.
All right, make a suggestion. Yeah, just
Very quickly.
yeah.
My attitude is clear and I think substantial, and that is I favour international negotiations between the two, supported by whoever, USA, United Nations, any other third party. We need to negotiate the whole problem in the Middle East. It's got to be done by all major countries. We can't have World War III, and that's what we're looking at.
Okay, thanks. So we'll come back to you, Kevin, in a moment. I'll just, there we go. Gary?
This is a question for Peter. You alluded in your talk and also in private conversation that you came to a policy in your business that you wouldn't tolerate clients who were stubborn, abusive or recalcitrant, uncooperative. I know you forfeited business, lost money because they then wouldn't pay their fees, but I remember you saying that that policy was really positive for your staff. And I'd like to know if you could elaborate on that, because it reminded me of the wisdom literature. It says, cast out the troublemaker and trouble will cease.
Indeed.
Thanks, Gary. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. As Gary knows, there were 5 clients that I fired, and they were people who you just could not build a trusting relationship with. They would be forever manufacturing problems. They were often businesses that didn't themselves run well, and when you're trying to do work with them, the difficulty is that you're often suffering from the fact that you're trying to do a collaborative job and the other half are incompetent. And if every time something incompetent is done, they want to blame you and don't want to pay bills and want to manufacture problems, you've got to do something about it. Invariably, when I fired clients, the reaction from my staff was, oh, great. So we don't have to go there anymore, right? And it meant that they could go and work for clients who valued their services. So the quality of the work they did was better, because it's easier to do work for good clients than for bad clients.
Thank you. Thanks, Peter, very much. Now, this gentleman here. Thank you.
Mine's a very simple question. How did you get the name of Hartford?
Oh, well, I think
Right.
I might actually...
Running around like a hairy
We're fortunate actually to have the chairman here, so I might actually give Tim the opportunity to answer that one.
Does this mean I've got to move the mic?
Getting some good exercise there, James. Hartford, it was a working title, it sounded posh, but as we thought more about it, we realised there was a connection to Psalm 42. Who asked the question? Oh, sorry. So Psalm 42, my heart longs for you like a deer longs for a running stream. And heart is actually spelled the old English way, is H-E-R-T. But we changed it to H-A-R-T. And so the logo of Hartford actually has that symbolism in it, if you look closely.
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah, it's, any more? Yeah, no, I think a lady down the back, then come back to you, Paddy. Right, here you go.
A fairly little bit short question. It's actually about Hartford again. I'm intrigued as to how difficult would it be, or likely, that non-church goers would want to go have their children at that school, and in addition, that they would be accepted. So,
Do me a favour, Michael, you're young, stand up and use the
Well, actually, in fact, a good number of our students aren't practicing Catholics. What we look for when interviewing parents are an openness to the values, to our ambitions, to the program, particularly the mentoring program. Because if that openness is there, then we can cooperate, then we can start working with the student and the parent to instill character and virtues. Our hope actually is to conduct subtle catechesis, in fact, by virtue of the curriculum that we have. So given the strong emphasis on Western civilization, there's obviously a lot of Judeo-Christian values imbued in that. You know, simply by reading Dante, they'll come to learn of hell and purgatory and so forth, not to mention all the other classical works, and studying Aquinas and so forth. So that curriculum is doing a lot of the heavy lifting for us without us and the staff being sort of too explicit when engaging the students. And again, we hope by the end of their graduation we have some real intellectual conversions, and as I mentioned earlier, hopefully some vocations as well. So, yeah.
Okay, that's good. Paddy.
Yeah, my question is to Veronica. As a man, I find it very difficult to talk about feminism and all those issues involved with that, particularly in where I live, because it's really not an issue. It's not. I'm in regional New South Wales. But I'm just thinking about this, that women usually set the standard and tone of things, okay? If the women are at a particularly low level, the men always get below that, okay? And so I sometimes think, and I'm not here to insult women, but if the women are not lifting their standard, they won't lift the men with them afterward, okay? So I really sometimes think there's a lot of accusations about male behaviour, and I've seen some pretty terrible behaviour by some women as well. And so I just wonder what you think about that. I'm just saying.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's a tricky one, but I think I'd go back to, again, the original feminists who, I think I mentioned in my talk, they wanted the right, not just to suffrage and, to do things just like men, but the right to assume responsibility in ways that they were prohibited from doing. And one of the examples I came across recently was, I think Elizabeth Ann Seton, and I forget who else, they went somewhere in America to a rally for abolition, and they weren't admitted because they were women. And that frustration to not have a place in the public sphere and to assume that responsibility for their fellow man, I think that was really one of the spurs to the earlier movement So it wasn't just, it was this sense of individual responsibility, which is different to that radical autonomy of the later version of the sexual revolution. It was, we want to be placed on that standard of, given that sense of humanity and dignity that comes with responsibility. There was still that sense that women and children were kind of on a par, and men were the ones who were leading the charge on all areas of life and ruling the country. And that wasn't necessarily the best model, or even something that was modelled on earlier times, like talking about during the Otto dynasty, where there was lots of queens ruling countries, and they were kind of lifting up their people, because generally women do have that nature to be more giving and benevolent and generous to the poor. And I know that's a generalisation, but I don't know if that's answered your question, but I think it's mostly the sense that women, we have responsibility for our own actions. It's not that we're responsible to raise men up and their behaviour up. That's not our responsibility. It's our responsibility, and this is what Mary Wollstonecraft starts to say, like, we need to educate women to stop being frivolous or too focused on clothes or, securing a marriage or a man, and actually inform their consciences and their minds through education. And I think that's where you're really going to get the complementarity between the sexes, when you lift them both up together. And yeah, that's what I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you. I just had this thought about, you were talking about women queens lifting the standards, and I thought about Queen Elizabeth I, and then I thought, oh yeah, well, she was 100% on her dad. So
Just one thought on that particular matter, and that is, it does seem to be based on my observation of marriages, including my own, that it's what Veronica mentioned in the course of her paper, and that is the interdependence of the male and the female. And I think both lift each other up in different ways. It's not in other words, it's a both and, not an either or. And in any relationship, there will be, I think, periods where for all sorts of different reasons, whether it's related to health or sickness of children or distress on one front or another, where the woman will be the weaker person in the relationship and needs to be supported and strengthened by the male. And other periods where that's exactly reversed, it seems to be, where the male is under tremendous pressure, whatever it might be. Again, it could be at work, facing unemployment, etc. And just had a hard day at the office, but it's gone on for some years. And the strength of the woman is what salvages the man and keeps him hanging in there. Chesterton used to say about one of the great arguments against divorce as a solution was that marriages should be hard to divorce, because it's the moments of weakness at the institution, of human weakness, that the institution needs to be strong. If the institution is weak, the human weakness will, in effect, take advantage of that. And so, as he said in relation to Henry VIII, that what began as the divorce of a king is ending in divorces of the whole kingdom. So I think in practice, the complexities of male-female relationships, particularly in something as intimate as marriage, is that over time each does the uplifting, and at other times, moments of great weakness and distress, the other one is there. And if that doesn't exist, then we end up with great collapse that has ramifying weaknesses for the culture and the society.
Thanks. Thank you, Carl. I think probably we should wind it up. A short question then, and one that requires only a short answer. Okay. Right, thank you. There you go.
Chesterton's a man who's a great character and larger than life character, really. What do you think is where do you think you are most similar to Chesterton, and where do you think you are most distinct? I think maybe just a 1 or 2 sentence answer from, I would like to ask more panelists to
Okay, well that's a bold one. So pass this along. We'll start this end. How are you most like Chesterton, and how are you most distinct? You want to pass on that, or do you want to crack it?
I think we share a similar physique. Actually, I do like his fashion style. I'd happily imitate that immediately. I think this is an answer I'd have to properly ponder on to come at a proper conclusion.
Taking that one on notice.
I think I'll take that one on notice. Where we diverge, I've got a bit of a complex relationship with Chesterton when it comes to women. I think he's very well-intentioned and a good man at heart and very devoted to his wife and his mother. And I think, though, his proclivity to use them as the standard for all women is honourable in one sense, but also being unhelpful in his writings about women. And I don't think he allows for other avenues of women to live out their womanhood in valid ways. So that's probably where I differ.
I've heard your tactful views on Chesterton before. It's really good.
It's very simple. Chesterton wins on intellect and on weight.
Where I align with him, he was famously asked by a newspaper what he thought the problem in the world was, and he famously said, me. And so I would agree with that with myself. And, well, the greatest difference is obviously his intellectual capacity, and I'm just still a humble student trying to learn. So.
Yes, I find that impossible to answer, actually. I think probably Virginia would say that as I get older, Chesterton's weakness for eccentricity is becoming more pronounced in my character. But then I take refuge in pondering that and thinking, well, if you've got an upside down view of life, as it were, curious angles to look at life from, that itself is enriching. I don't think I'm like Chesterton in any way that I can think of, to be honest. I mean, we have lots of things in common, but I think the inspirational value of him for me over the years, going right back now, is that what it stimulated or makes me aspire to be. So that's a constant encouragement, really.
Thanks, Carl. Thank you. Well, look, we must wind up there. Now, I think it's just a couple of quick remarks on my own. Mass is at 5:15. I think it's intellectually lazy to say ever about something that is the best that's ever happened. So I'm not going to say this is the best Chesterton conference that I can recall, but it's as good as any. And I think all 6 speakers were super. And I'm only sorry that it was a very rich and diverse range. And I'm only sorry that Marie Yo and Greg Sheridan couldn't be here for this winding up. But let me just wind up by reminding you of something that Greg said, because I thought it had me in stitches. He's a very funny man. He spoke about the kindness and sweetness of nature that Carl Schluter has always shown, and he said it was a characteristic not common among Prussians. So on behalf of the organisers, thank you very much for being here today.